Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Welcome back. And I'll hand over to Lucia for the summary of the breakout.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back from the coffee break. And here we will have this last plenary. It's a report of the breakout room. So I will invite Ben Cox from the third breakout room. So I also James Philfoot and Kim to come and join me on the stage, please. So we have 45 minutes for this session, and then before we finalize this lovely day. And now we want to hear from each other's session because, as you know, these were running in parallel. So it would be very nice to know what was discussed, what were the main outcomes from each session. So that's why we thought to have first a report and then a roundtable about the discussions. So we have, if we have time, we will have also some questions from the audience as well. And as I introduced before, these are your reporters from the breakout rooms. Before we jump to this, we would like to please ask you to take part on this small Slido. So please scan this QR code and join us with some of your answers, please. Also the participants online. Okay, I don't see people scanning anymore, so maybe we can move. The question was, what are 3 words that summarize your main conclusions of the day? So this is a word cloud that we will take with us. Oh, okay. This we will take for the discussions, your input. So risk, CRA, awareness, complex collaboration, standard collaboration. All right, this looks very promising for our panel discussion, actually, for our roundtable. Okay, synergies, SMEs, risk. The risk keeps on growing. Yes, this is a very, very key word of the day. That's very nice. We will give 1 more minute to this word cloud to continue growing, and then we will open the reports. And please, the reporters, I ask you to retain these words because this will be key for the roundtable. Compliance loves security. I like that one. Many, many, many initiatives. Yes. CRE community awareness, harmonization. Amazing. Thank you. Love. Yes. Also. Skills, speed, too many standards. Yes. We understand. It's confusing. Confusion. Yes. Problems. But risk keeps on growing. So I will take risk, complex collaboration, and standards and alignments. And I don't look anymore. All right, shall we move to the reports of the breakout session? So I will start then with the session number 1 on the vertical standards. So Kim, I give the floor to you for a short recap. What were your main takeaways from the session?
Thank you, Lucia. Yes, indeed. In the breakout session number 1 on product-specific standards, we had a presentation on smart meter gateways from Enrico Frumento, and followed by a presentation on hypervisors from Muhammad Haj, and finally finishing up with a presentation on consumer IoT by Kim Nordstrom. That's me. And during the breakout session, I mean, we focused on the unique cybersecurity needs and characteristics of the different product categories, and keeping in mind all the time that the product-specific standards shall be risk-based, and that the product-specific standards they shall reflect the intended purpose and the foreseeable use of the products itself. We also highlighted the fact that that all stakeholders on the market can benefit from the presumption of conformity to the essential cybersecurity requirements in response to the Cyber Resilience Act. That is, once the harmonized standards or the standards to be produced for the product-specific features are listed as harmonized standard in the official journal of the European Union. We noted that for now we are focusing on the important and critical products, but we have the ambition to create an expanding ecosystem for the product-specific standards in the future. So that is where we are going. We also discussed the importance to work together, and that it is a joint effort to develop product-specific standards in response to the Cyber Resilience Act. And going to the more specific product-specific standard presentation on hypervisors, I learned that a hypervisor is a software that abstracts hardware resources and enable multiple isolated virtual machines to run in parallel on a shared physical host. I hope, Muhammad, I got that right. Good. So at least I learned something during this session. And what more? Smart meter gateways. Yes, we learned that the product lifespan or the lifetime of a smart meter gateway can be more than 10 years. 10 years in the context of cybersecurity is a very, very long time. And what about consumer IoT? Well, in the presentation on the consumer IoT, we noted that there are multiple standards to be developed. It's foreseeable that we have a product-specific standard on home, smart home assistants, on personal wearables and smart home security products. And yeah, there is much work to be done there. And this work is being coordinated by the Technical Committee Cybersecurity in ETSI, jointly with SEN and SENELEC. So that is a short introduction, a summary of what we talked about during the breakout session on product-specific standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim, for that. We will keep some notes for the discussion for the roundtable. We move now to the report of James.
Okay, so in the SME Challenges session, I think we had a lot of very good discussion, and we somehow managed to go from the very broad, big picture, such as the challenges that SMEs have in general with standards and how they can be made more usable, down to the very narrow, so the kind of user journey or user story of a manufacturing SME that encounters the CRA for the first time. So we really covered a lot, so just thank you to the experts for their contributions here. But to summarize a few key points that we touched upon, as I mentioned, we discussed standards and how they can be made more easily adoptable by SMEs, or whether or what kind of guidance or support should be needed so that this is easier for companies that are on the smaller side, they can use them. Also, we discussed what kind of approach small companies will take to CRA. Is it just something that they look at and think, okay, we need to externally kind of source some support for this? Or can we begin to develop the in-house tools and competencies to cover? What does that look like? Whether this model kind of as compliance as a service is actually something that the market is okay with, or do we want to try and change that to bring all of these competencies in-house, whether that's feasible or not? And then coupled with this, the big word in the middle of the word cloud, risk, we had a nice discussion about the first touch point with the CRA, so the risk-based approach. How does this affect companies? What will they think about when they're doing this? So I think this is very relevant to the discussions that were had in the third session. And then finally, we talked a lot about how to communicate about the CRA to companies, whether or not we can try and communicate this positively, what the best way to do that would be, and not just kind of is legislation, you need to comply with it, but what are the kind of advantages to being CRA compliant, how this can help your company, help your business, what the differentiating factor can be if you have this level of cybersecurity. So I think these are things that Cyberstand is already looking at, but we learn a bit more about how we can specifically do this going forwards.
All right. Thank you very much for that very good summary. And we move to the last report. Ben, the floor is yours. What did you take away from your session?
Yeah, so the third section was on risk management and risk assessment. The main objective of the CRA is that products that are placed on the market are not only secure when they are placed on the market, so secure out of design, but are maintained being secure during their total life cycle, during the expected lifetime. So this is risk management, and a key element, of course, if risk management for an organization is that you execute all the activities that are required there. So you will do the testing, you will have to look at your threat models, you have to assess the risks, you have to become aware of vulnerabilities. What are these risks? You need to, of course, assess, like, is this a low risk? Is this a high risk? What is acceptable for this product or not? So in the third session, I tried to walk that through from a high level, because at the horizontal standards, all we can do is do this at a high level. The challenge for the horizontal standards is that it's not product specific, it is not even sector specific. We're talking about products that, for instance, are for consumers, where I would argue that, for instance, risk transfer. With risk transfer, we mean that certain risks you cannot resolve in your product, and you say the end user have to mitigate these risks. This risk transfer is, of course, of a different nature if I do the risk transfer to a professional organization or to a company that is, to a manufacturer that is integrating my component into their product, or when you do this to a consumer. Risk also, of course, is dependent on the fact that, is this a product that is just a simple app that does not process, for instance, a lot of personal data? Or is this a product that processes a lot of personal data, or even have safety functions and safety impact? So all of these things have to be taken into consideration. So in the third session, we walked through, like, how do you evaluate that? What are the things you look on, like the intended use, the intended user, the environment in which the product is used? How do you then, what are some of the considerations to do the risk, to define the risk acceptance criteria, to do the risk classification? How do you become aware of risks, etc.? All of that, again, for the horizontal, on a very high abstract level. And as was also stated by one of the good comments that we got during the session, the horizontal is addressing the what. What is expected? What is expected from the manufacturers? Yeah, and of course, there is a certain goal, the what. We define in the standard what are the expected inputs, what are the expected outputs. But the how We're not addressing that at a horizontal standard, because if the product is, for instance, used for automotive, there are set standards and requirements. If the product is, for instance, a chip, there are standard methodologies there. So we cannot address the how. This is where the vertical standards might play a role. And I really say might play a role, because sometimes these vertical standards also have the same challenge, that depending on the technology, whether they are very specific or very broad, also there they cannot be that prescriptive. So the third session was really focusing on that and trying to give the overall picture. And I ended with the table of content of our current draft that currently shows these activities, these expectations in a very rough overview.
Thank you very much, everyone. So Ben, I will do an immediate follow-up question, because you say that in the previous session, indeed, we were talking about how the horizontals will provide the what. But the legislation, the CRA also provides the what. And we also saw in our word cloud a lot the word risk. So I think what I'm trying to say here is we don't necessarily need to wait until the standard is finalized. We know already from the CRA what we have to do. So is there any advice you can give to manufacturers of default categories or SMEs on how to start preparing, knowing that there are some things in common already, like the risk assessment, that they can already start doing? So what can be ways for them to prepare until the standards are ready?
Thank you for that question. I need to answer that question first with, be aware that if your product is in scope of the Cyber Resilience Act and your product is a physical product that has Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, you have 2 months to be in compliance with the red delegated regulation, which is very similar to a certain extent to the Cyber Resilience Act. In about addressing the security issue. So if you're not aware of that one, please look up on the Red Delegated Act, which goes into application on the 1st of August. So very good point, because in my view, as you stated, Lucia, in the CRA legal text, there's already a very clear prescription of what products should mitigate. If we look at the, especially at Annex 1, where the essential requirements are for the product and the organization, you already learn very much like, okay, you have to protect against unauthorized access. There should be no exploitable vulnerabilities in the product. All of this can be already addressed now. So if you are new to security, I would urge everybody, look at the CRA legal obligations and start doing that now. Don't wait. Start to act now, because time is short. Also for the legal obligations for the organization itself, the vulnerability handling, like the coordinated vulnerability disclosure, that you're able to receive reports from the field. I would not know why anybody would wait for that. Get that in place. And also all the activities there. So you're absolutely right. What will the horizontal standard still bring? Because if you say, okay, I look at the legal text, I am fine. I don't have to look. I am in compliance. And that's true for the default products. Because if you will bring a default product on the market under the Cyber Resilience Act, you need to demonstrate conformity yourself. And you can do that by doing any means. I would argue that if you would use the horizontal standards that we're writing, which do not give a presumption of conformity. So that means that if you apply our standards, it will not claim, you cannot claim, oh, I am in compliance, as having the presumption of compliance. But if you look at the horizontal standards, in these horizontal standards, we will write, you have to do testing. And these are some of the tests that we expect. And these are some of the reports that we expect. If you're going to do continuous testing, you need to document how often you will test what. And in the horizontal standards, we're going to write the expectations there. If you will use the horizontal standards and you will check, hey, what we need to demonstrate as evidence. Do we have that evidence that is written in the horizontal standard? If you can say yes, I am convinced you can be, as an organization, very confident that you are doing what is required. So you can be confident in writing that declaration of conformity. Because the horizontal standards are built by the experts, industry experts, are supported by the market surveillance authorities, by the notified bodies. It's the common stakeholder view, hopefully with the Commission blessing, on what is expected to be sufficient.
Thank you very much, Ben. And then I see James, you would like to follow up. So excellent.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if it's okay if I just
Yeah,
take the mic,
please.
but I'd like to feedback on one of the discussions we had because it actually responds to your very first opening sentence to that, which was when you're aware of the CRA. And we were actually discussing there is still quite a significant number of SMEs in the market that are not actually aware. And so this is a challenge that we were discussing. But then once they are aware, maybe it's only one person in the team and they need to make the rest of their team aware because it's not perhaps that person that is doing the testing or doing the secure by design. It might be your product engineers, and suddenly they now need to become also aware of how to build a product that is secure by design. So what we were discussing is how is it possible to support this? What kind of support, what kind of guidance can be done to make sure that first of all, companies are aware, then there's an easy access into the standards, into the guidance, into the CRA, and then this can be implemented within companies. So that was our perspective on this angle here. And I just wanted to share that because it's a discussion that we were having. We didn't necessarily find the answers to, but I think before we can even inform companies about using all of this, we need to inform them about the CRA. And what the best way to do that is something we're still learning.
Excellent. That's a very good point because awareness raising is actually the first step. And I wanted to ask you, what are your views on how the Cyberstand can help us with that?
I think the community of Cyberstand is very strong, not just within the project, but also the other projects that we had here today. Utilizing the networks that are available. I think this is a very good way of sharing the message, but also finding out the right way to communicate about the CRA, not just saying that it's a piece of legislation, not just saying that it's standards you have to implement, but it will make your product more secure. And I think people in the market are now beginning to value that more. So this can be a competitive advantage. It can be an innovation. One of the speakers, I think they've left, unfortunately, was saying how they view the CRA as an opportunity for them to distinguish themselves on the market because their product is more in line with it than their competitors at the moment. So they see it as an innovation for them and a win for them in their marketing. So I think talking about it in these terms rather than as a set of obligations can help with that. And then helping them into understanding the rest, I think, is the way to go.
Thank you, James. And I'm going to have a question for someone who's not on stage, but I'm looking at Matteo because you are leading the CRA communities. So maybe I will come with the mic to you and ask you how can people join the CRA communities and how then can that help with the awareness point?
Yes, and maybe I'll also bounce back because I was in your meeting room when I was asking the disturbing questions. But really, I would say in Cyberstand we have spillover effect. We created communities, but then they became communities with other projects, Horizon project, friends of friends, cybersecurity experts. That's I think that's the power of it. We have like a repository page where we show some of the resources and webinar we already delivered, but obviously you can always reach out to anyone in the consortium, in EXO, to me, and there's a dedicated page in Cyberstand where you can basically subscribe to the communities. It's a very light process. We just ask you why you want to join. Obviously, if you're just passing by saying, I want to learn more, maybe we're looking for people to contribute. And I understand that mirrors a little bit also the groups of experts because you need to have people that then are active. So in a nutshell, yeah, just join the website, reach out. I wanted to say something else on the awareness side. There's many angles. We discussed it a lot. It came up that there's a need also awareness of what are the fines and penalties because there's always this carrot and stick debate when it comes to regulation. You have regulation, some people implement it. A lot of people I come across to want to implement it because they don't want to be fined. And there's a balance also to try to tell people you want to implement it because you're going to be better off in the market. And in some years, people will go and buy for components that are CRA compliant. And there was some misunderstanding on the fines, for instance. Also, we need to make sure that we want to we were all saying we don't want to have a punitive approach in CRA. We want to make sure people implement this, not saying we're going to fine you if you don't implement it. And people need to be made aware of that flexibility that there is in the CRA text, especially for small companies, SMEs and micro SMEs. So that's for us a checklist for having an extra awareness point. Made it a bit long, but.
Thanks a lot, Matteo. That's very helpful so that people know we have the CRA communities also in the context of cyberstand and they can join you. And so now people are aware, they are reading the CRA, so they are trying their best to catch up. And they stumble upon standards. So Kim, I wanted to ask you, why it is so important then to develop European standards that are product specific? How can that help for compliance?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, indeed, now we are aware of the risks and the threats, and also aware of the essential requirements in the legislation. So now it's time to act and work together to build a more resilient society. And standardization is a powerful tool and a powerful platform for doing that. Within the standardization community, when we work together, we can consolidate fragmented cybersecurity related efforts and protect the connected products that we use in our daily life. And so it's really about working together and using the tools and methods that we have provided by standardization to mitigate the threats against cybersecurity. And I also like to think that standardization can provide a structured way of working with the implementation of cybersecurity controls in our connected products. So I believe it's an effective way to in a structured way to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And I will immediately follow up with a short question, and then I give the floor to Ben. And how is it like to belong to standardization? Do you have to be a standardization expert to be in the group, or what kind of expertise can you bring?
Lucia, it's beautiful. Yeah, I invite everyone to join. We have members who have joined together, joined forces. We have European standardizations that have joined together and joined forces. We are welcoming new people that haven't earlier maybe worked with standardization. And I challenge those of you who earlier maybe have been standards consumers to turn into standards producers. So you're all invited. Thank you.
Ben, you wanted to add something in the previous point, I believe.
Yes, indeed. What I always like to say when we talk about standards and using standards, for me, one of the key things of standards is it's a way of communication. What I mean with that is, and especially if you think nowadays under the obligations, for instance, on the NIS2, if I as an end user know this product has been using this standard for its development, I have a better understanding of the security risks that are addressed and the way that they are addressed. So for me, standards also are an enormous good way to convey what has been really achieved in the product. And I just want to highlight that. And last but not least, I want to absolutely second what Kim stated. We need experts. We need more experts. If I look especially also on the horizontal standards, we have the challenge to write something that fits everybody. And there are a lot of complex situations where certain sectors or certain type of products have very specific concerns that if we do not address them correctly in our standards, you might have a negative consequences of that. So yes, we need more people to bring more knowledge to what we're doing.
Thank you very much. And I want to mention it's very important to have many views and many eyes checking if what we are developing, okay, not only on the horizontals, but also on the verticals is going to be fit for purpose. And here we have the open source, we have the SMEs that we invite to join the work. And in particular, in SensorLec, we have the Guide 17 that is about how to develop standards that are fit for purpose for SMEs. So it would be beautiful to see some contributions, perhaps via the CyberStand project, to try to take a look at any of the deliverables and with a critical eye, see if what we're doing is going to be proportionate, if it's going to be helpful for everyone. So that's to complement to what you have said. Talking about now the legislation. So the CRA in particular has a bunch of essential requirements, and with the standards, what we're doing basically is to translate the essential requirements into technical specifications and technical details. So Ben, in the horizontals, then you are product agnostic, right? But what is the relationship with the standards that are going to be the verticals, the product specific? And how the link with the compliance with the essential requirements will be achieved in one case and in the other?
Thanks for that question, Lucia. So indeed, in the horizontal standards, we need to be product agnostic. We need to be technology agnostic. We have no clue of what the end product will be. So what you will see in the end product of in the horizontals, in principle, we have three main standards. Two of them are process standards, which is the general activities you need to do to develop and maintain a product in a secure state. We have the vulnerability handling process, which is really focusing on what you need to do to maintain a product secure, to do the monitoring, to do the testing, and then trigger redevelopment when necessary. So our assumption is, from a horizontal perspective, that the verticals can really rely on these process standards, especially the vulnerability handling. Our view is that that will not really change depending on the product or the organization. But a vertical standard might, for instance, say, like, oh, but if there is a vulnerability, you need to fix that within 1 to 3 months. In the horizontal, we cannot go there. In the horizontal, we're going to state the manufacturer has to declare how quickly he will fix low, medium, or high vulnerabilities. And then, of course, he needs to demonstrate that that is documented. And then, of course, the Market Surveillance Authority can step in. Did you document something? Is what you documented, does that make sense? Again, the legal defensible position. And of course, then the Market Surveillance Authority can also check, are you actually doing what you have documented? But the verticals, as they are more narrow in scope, could, for instance, augment that. Another example is what we'll be talking about again in vulnerability handling, that you have to do continuous testing. So again, all we can do in the horizontal standard is state you have to document how often you will test your product with what tools. Will you do that every month or every half year or whatever? Again, the verticals, as they are more specific, they're more aware of the intended use and the intended environment of use, they can be more specific, they can augment it. That's the process standards. Sorry for a long story. If we look now at the product side, then it becomes a little bit more complex, because on the product side, this standard will be a catalog of security controls. And then, of course, it will give you, I would prefer to say guidance. If you look at the essential requirements, what controls to select to mitigate the threats that are exposed to the essential requirements you have to fulfill. This is where the vertical standards can be very more prescriptive because they know the product, they know the environment. So there they can actually would be able to say like, no, you have to do this and you have to do that in this product. Again, if I think about the consumer IoT, again, not that specific because again, it's very broad. But if I, for instance, think about smart meter gateway, and I'm absolutely probably completely wrong, but in my mind, that is a very, or at least a more narrow type of product. So there, the specificity can come in. And if I think about how, for instance, the horizontal standards could be used, like if you say like, oh, I'm going to develop a standard for, I don't care, a Bluetooth hairdryer, I don't care what. You could say, I'm going to develop a vertical standard. In that vertical standard, I will write, you have to do the horizontal process standard. And from the product standard, you have to implement that, and that requirement. So this would be an easy way to develop a vertical standard because you can really pinpoint out of the horizontals what is required. So this is a little bit the interplay that I foresee.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much. I hope that was helpful also for the ones that are here and the people that are online, that you can start understanding what we are developing to respond to the standardization request. James, maybe you have to...
Yeah, sure. I'd just like to feedback a little bit from the discussions we had, because when we were talking about standards in the other room, there was a discussion about how for SMEs, standards can seem like a list of what to do, but not how to do it. And the kind of approach here of developing an SME guide to standardization, the horizontal standards, that the process standards seem to be a bit of a step in that direction. They seem to be, as you said, more prescriptive. So they help you go from A to B to C to select the tools that you need. And then I think as Cyberstand, we are looking at developing guidance alongside this. So I think already there's a step in the direction of making these more accessible for SMEs. One question that we did have within the other room, though, was, are the vertical standards going to be developed with other standards already related to those products in mind? I don't remember which standards, but there were a couple that were referenced. And how could they impact the product design lifecycle alongside these new standards? Or will there be kind of a mapping of existing standards to make sure that there isn't duplication or overlaps?
Would you like to take that up, Ben?
Yeah, so for some of the vertical standards that are currently being developed, they are reusing current existing international standards. They are only adopted to the extent that they are fulfilling all the essential requirements under the CRA. I'm personally involved in the part of the group that is, for instance, doing the 62443, IEC 62443, which is the standard for SCADA, industrial SCADA systems for operational technology. And the challenge there is that on one end, we try to be as close to the existing international standard because it's a state-of-the-art, used internationally. But of course, we need to make sure that adopts to the CRA. I presume that, of course, within ETSI, we'll do the same, where we have the ETSI Consumer IoT standard that is also an established international state-of-the-art. And there also we want to remain close to that because that is beneficial for not only the manufacturers for here in Europe, but of course, there are many manufacturers that place their products on a global scale. And although we need to, of course, set a higher bar for Europe, we want, of course, to align also what happens on the international level. So yes, some of the verticals are reusing the existing state-of-the-art, and also, for instance, for the chips, there are already a lot of good security standards out there, and we don't want to throw them away. Because that would only limit or increase impact.
Okay, so I think it's very good, and these conversations are great because you have different stakeholders that then normally don't interact a lot with each other. And it's great to hear the challenges that one sees and the other ones, how from the other side we can support or learn from those challenges as well. So thank you, James, for raising that point. And now I'm going to have, I think, one last question before we finalize this roundtable. We have covered a little bit of the life cycle of the product until the post-market obligation, but there is some point where the manufacturer will stop supporting the products and the product will become legacy. So Kim, I wanted to ask you, what would happen? Do you know, can you help us? We get this question a lot. What would happen with the legacy products?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And maybe I will start by mentioning that as we know, cybersecurity is not a project; it's a process. So we need to work with cybersecurity every day because we will never be ready. And at the same time, we are equally aware of that the number of connected products on the market is increasing day by day. And we need to make sure that connected products that we use in our daily life, that they are both safe and secure. Both products that we put on the market before the Red Delegated Act, before CRA, as we discussed in the breakout session on smart meter gateways, some of the products, the lifespan is fantastically long. And at the same time, we're also very much aware of that manufacturers are designing and building products as we speak. They cannot wait until we have a specific standard available. And that's the beauty of the cybersecurity as a process. We also know that no product is unbreakable. If we have enough time and resources, all products are vulnerable. And so for the legacy products, what the CRA brings on the table is related to reporting, for example. So that is something stakeholders on the market want to look into, the reporting of vulnerabilities, both for products that are already on the market and products that you are planning to sell on the market in the future. Okay.
All right, thank you. Then I don't know if anyone wants to do any follow-up. Maybe we can take one question from the audience. Yes.
Thank you. In the presentations was mentioned the public inquiry is going to happen in autumn. So can you give a little bit more details, what, when, who, how is going to happen, how we can participate and so on?
Thank you very much for the question. So as a normal step of the standard development, we have something that is called public inquiries. Thank you for that. And each of the deliverables will have a different timing because each one has their own development process and everything. So at this moment, we don't have that planning because the developments are ongoing. We do have a website that we can share and advertise also together with the colleagues of the cyber stand. The name of the website is standforcra.eu. That is a joint effort from Sensenelec and ETSI, where we are going to keep posting updates on the work program. And there you will find information of all of the projects that are entering the inquiry. And now with this long introduction, I will then mention for the rest of the audience, I think why you're mentioning this is very important, because the public inquiry is a moment where anyone, even a citizen, can provide feedback on the draft standard. So for those who would like then to take a look at the draft, that is a good moment. And how you can find the information as an external non-standardizer could be via our website. And we will make sure that we will make available that information via the Cyberstand project and any other channel of Sensenelec or ETSI. All right, with this, I don't want to prevent you from going to the nice networking event that the CyberStand has prepared for us. So I'm going to close by first saying thank you to the panelists, and then also summarizing a little bit how can the CyberStand support you. Today, we support expert participation on the development of standards via the CyberStand funding. And coming next, there is preparation for guidance of standards, as James was saying, implementation designed specifically for the SMEs, because what we want is that by the entry of application of the CRA by December 2027, we are as ready as possible. So this is what the CyberStand project is helping us to do today. So, and I think here you saw this, the 7 SSP is the one that is ongoing, but there is a new one from Monday, the 8 SSP is available. And I think that is my last slide. Thank you, and thank you for the reporters, and a big applause for them, please.
So thank you very much to Lucia for chairing this afternoon, and to all the chairs too. And yeah, as Lucia mentioned, the next phase, the next call, or the next SSP starts next week, and that's focusing mainly on vertical standards, but of course on any aspect that is still a priority. And I think one of the takeaways from the project is that we'd like to have more interaction with the working groups, with Ben and with Angelo, to really make sure that the contributions that we are funding are meaningful and timely enough for the work which is going on. So we heard a lot, for example, about the projects which are delivering use cases. For example, that would be an interesting thing that perhaps we can help fund their contributions to the use cases, and then anything else. We want to strengthen this collaboration with Working Group 9. So we've heard a lot of nice words about to raise awareness, because this was one of our main objectives of the Cyber Resilience Act, to give an update on the situation with the standards, and then to have these important breakout sessions, because we wanted really to discuss the vertical standards as we move into this phase now, and also one of our objectives, of course, the challenges and opportunities for SMEs. And in the breakout session before, we had quite a nice overview of how, you know, standards are creating a level playing field for small and medium enterprises in particular. So we heard that standardization is a form of communication so that people can understand the risks which have been assessed and which have been addressed, and the trust that consumers can have within a product. And this is, of course, another word we heard was empowerment. So empowering an SME to be able to convey the work that they've put into their product to make it safe. And we also heard just now, I thought was quite nice, from James, you know, standardization can help you get from A to B to C as well. So as you just heard from Lucia, the new call is open. It's open right through to September, but the applications are continuously assessed by the evaluators. So you put an application in and it'll be assessed immediately. So it's not like we're waiting until September to evaluate them. They'll be done continuously. That's very important to raise. And the other point I wanted to highlight was the projects we had on board today. There were 9 projects presented, and we want to really form close collaboration with them so that we can, you know, really create some deep dives around topics such as risk assessment, methodologies on penetration testing, and of course the contribution to use cases. So I'd like to thank all of our speakers and all of our panelists today, and I'd like to also say a special thank you to Luigi and Teresa, who are there over there, who have really been important in organizing everything and getting you all here. Okay.